The Office of Nuclear Development provides an example of where a government unit with defined focus, strong political leadership, and a willingness to engage with all stakeholders can make a real difference. The OND has worked closely with industry to identify a clear timetable of regulatory and legal actions on the government side, and is also working with ICE to ensure that lessons from recent new builds around the world are captured and fed back into the UK programme. Taken together, all this helps build confidence and to reduce risk premiums on some of the most expensive upfront investment that we're likely to see. And clarity of funding streams is important. As Paul Morell, the government's chief construction advisor, has noted in a recent report, the significant constraints on infrastructure development are going to be the ability of the user and the taxpayer to service the funding. And this will require hard decisions from government, popular or unpopular. For example, the use of charges and tolls on the road network may need to be expanded, whilst regulators may have to allow water and energy utilities a higher return on investment as part of a wider recalibration of the activities of Ofwat and Ofgem, and so on. We also need ideas for unlocking new streams of funding. With this in mind, I'm looking forward to listening to our speaker later this morning, who will be talking about tax increment financing, which I understand has been used widely in the USA. And finally, direct savings into infrastructure. We shall need to find new ways to help direct personal savings into infrastructure. All parties are committed, at least rhetorically, to rebalancing the economy away from consumption and imports towards saving, investment and exports. If this is successful, there will be a greater pool of savings available for recycling into productive investments. We need to make sure that we have the transmission mechanisms in place to take advantage of this opportunity. So given these challenges, how can the IC's proposal for a National Infrastructure Investment Bank help? Well, it can help reduce risk through equity. The Green Investment Bank, announced in the budget, will take equity stakes in riskier projects. By putting its own capital at risk, the Green Investment Bank will create the platform on which the private sector debt finance can be levered in. Successful investment will create valuable assets, which, assuming the Green Investment Bank is properly empowered, could be used as security for future funding and fundraising in the capital markets. Unfortunately, the budget made clear that the Green Investment Bank will, at least initially, have relatively small resources, around £2 billion of equity, to fund schemes and back new technologies. I think we need to be rather more ambitious and to send a signal that the £2 billion is a good start, but that the intention must be to build a far larger institution similar to other development banks, such as the Nordic Investment Bank and Germany's KfW. And it can reduce risk through depoliticisation. I also believe that the National Infrastructure Investment Bank, operating at arm's length from government and working with the Infrastructure UK's 50-year framework, can help depoliticise investment decisions around some strategically important projects, again with the potential to reduce risks and associated costs. Earlier, I mentioned the need for more direct personal savings into infrastructure, and a National Infrastructure Investment Bank is in a position to develop and sell new investment products, infrastructure bonds, perhaps, linked to particular projects, or a pool of projects is one possibility, or even infrastructure-based ISAs for retail investment. As an institution, a National Infrastructure Investment Bank could be a focus for the development of new thinking and also for development of new financing and funding for infrastructure. Also, infrastructure development is a project-based industry where knowledge capture and transfer can be a real problem. A National Infrastructure Investment Bank could be a centre for institutional memory, helping to ensure that lessons have been learned and best practice pushed forward. In fact, a National Infrastructure Investment Bank, along with the other reforms I referred to earlier, including Infrastructure UK, the Planning Act, the Chief Construction Advisor. Together, these could create an interlocking set of mutually reinforcing institutions, which in turn could create an environment far more helpful than that faced by investors and developers in recent years. Where would such a bank's initial capitalisation come from? Well, again, the Green Investment Bank proposal is instructive, but perhaps insufficiently ambitious. Some existing funds can and are being consolidated, whilst some existing publicly owned assets can and are being sold. However, I believe we should be thinking more widely. If low-carbon infrastructure is our goal, shouldn't it be possible for some of the proceeds from the future sales of CO2 permits to be directed towards the infrastructure bank? Or why not transfer some or all of the government's 100% shareholding in Network Rail to the bank? Now, finally, there are a couple of outstanding practical questions around a national infrastructure bank concept. The purpose would be to complement, but not to replace markets. And therefore, a national infrastructure investment bank would have to lever in and not crowd out private finance. So we'd need to ask, first of all, how large should the bank be? What should we be aiming for in terms of initial capitalisation? And secondly, what is a realistic level of leverage? And thirdly, what should the bank's lending criteria be? What type of project should qualify? And should this be linked to policy objectives, for example, around low carbon? And how large a stake in any project should a national infrastructure bank take? So, in summary, I believe the reforms of the last 18 months, particularly the passing of the Planning Act, the appointment of the government's Chief Construction Advisor, and most recently, the creation of Infrastructure UK, are taking us a long way towards creating a new institutional architecture that could significantly reduce political risk and encourage development. The recently announced Green Investment Bank is certainly a useful start, and hopefully it'll help find new ways of increasing the volume of funds that can be directed towards infrastructure investment. Developing the Green Investment Bank into a full-blown national infrastructure investment bank would show that we have the ambition to deliver an infrastructure fit for the economic, climate change and energy security challenges that the country is going to face in the coming decades. So there is still a great deal to do. Thank you for your attention.